Hello and welcome back to the Meadowbank Thistle Podcast. You thought I'd forgotten about you, didn't you? Following the amazing success of the reunion event back in May, I've taken a break to concentrate on the work I get paid for and also my family. I'm back just now with two summer specials, interviews with Peter Cormack and John McCormack. First, a bit of a roundup on the reunion event. On the 31st of May at Parkside Bowling Club, we got together over 150 former players, supporters and family members for a fantastic celebration of all things Meadowbank Thistle. We started the night with an introduction from me. I wrote this huge speech, but when I got up there, I just winged it. It was getting a bit emotional. It was pretty overwhelming to think about how I started this with a couple of match programs I bought on eBay to having all these people staring at me. But I think I kept it together. I sent everyone to the bar, and we had a lovely spread put on by Moira at the bowling club. I'll take this opportunity to thank Robert Donaldson at Parkside Bowling Club for being so welcoming and helping facilitate such a great night. After the food, we gave out our first set of awards to the three players who scored the most goals for the club: John Jobson, Adrian Sprott and David Roseborough. Adrian's award was collected by Chris Robertson, who was able to pass it on to Adrian's widow Karen, as she was on holiday at the time. Then we had our first speaker, Alan Banks, back on the scene of his very first speaking gig. Banksy brought down the house. He got everybody into the perfect spirit. Everyone dashed back to the bar in time for the awards for the most appearances. Awards picked up by Graham Armstrong, Jim McQueen and Walter Boyd. These were followed by a sermon from Scottish football great Jim Leishman. Let me just say, it's a good job it was after 9 o'clock by the time Jim came on. Finally, we had two Lifetime Contribution Awards, which were presented to Terry Christie and Laurie Glasson. Terry remained upstanding and delivered a passionate recollection of his time with Meadowbank and left us all with that warm, fuzzy feeling inside. I've had a lot of people asking when we'll do it again. I'm not going to commit to anything just now, but watch this space. Got loads of people to thank. First and foremost is David Baxter. None of this would be happening without him. I wouldn't have been able to start reading about this story without his programs and newsletters. Then I really don't think I'd have made much progress without his endorsement when I started out. I had a couple of hours on the phone with him, won him round, and yeah, the rest has been history from there. But really, his name just opened so many doors, and he's been huge in all of this. Next is Mickey Lawson, who was my gateway into the pool of players. I actually messaged him on my 32nd birthday. That was the height of excitement, and his help at that time was really important. Next is the reunion committee, so Stuart Williamson, Jim McQueen, Tom Hendry, Laurie Dunn, Alan Banks, David Baxter and David Stoker, all fundamental in helping bring the event to life. David Stoker did a fantastic job with pulling together the programme for the evening, and we do still have some available if you didn't make it along or you forgot to pick one up on the way out. Huge thanks go to the three speakers who gave up all their time and energy free of charge, delivering great entertainment and speaking about this special club so brilliantly. I'd like to thank Max Christie and IFA Wealth Management for sponsoring the event. And finally, everyone who's taken any interest in this project in any capacity. It's been really humbling and enjoyable, but only because of the warmth that you guys listening, reading and talking to me have shown me. It's just been overwhelming, really. And there's still loads to come. Now, the important thing from all this is that I really enjoy it, but I don't stand to gain anything financially. I'm not looking to exploit anybody's memories. Well, I mean, I'm sounding like a broken record. You've heard this all before, but the main thing is that we raised £600 from the reunion, and myself, Banksy and Jim McQueen presented a huge novelty check to the Edinburgh Food Project a few weeks back. The Edinburgh Food Project runs 7 food banks across the city and also a money advice service, which I really, really believe in, and that's why we nominated that charity. So we gave them £600, hopefully the first check of many. And there's still loads to come. Today, in the first summer special, is an interview with Peter Cormack. Peter was Meadowbank's reserve team player of the year 2 seasons in a row, but never quite managed to break into the first team, making just 2 appearances. He moved on to Newcastle United and then played for a series of clubs in Scotland. He does have a pretty unique story, and had a fantastic time speaking to him. So strap yourselves in and enjoy. Peter Cormack, welcome to the Meadowbank Thistle Podcast.
Hi, Brent. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you making the time. We'll go right back to the start as we always do. So talk to me about your childhood.
Yeah, it was full of excitement. It was a really enjoyable childhood. Myself, I was born in Liverpool when my dad played for Liverpool. Sister was born in Nottingham when he played for Nottingham Forest. It was just, mum and dad were happily married, and it was great. Just full of football from day one, as you can imagine. getting taken to games. And yeah, it was just a really, really happy childhood. Full of great memories. Going on holiday with Billy McNeil and his family. Went on holidays with Joe Royal and his family. So there was always kind of that football element as we grew up. Kind of a lot of travel and disruption. From probably when I was born to 13, I didn't really, we didn't have a home as such. We kind of travelled about a lot. It was when I was 13, moved back to Edinburgh, and that's kind of where I got to make my own friends and friendship group, and kind of joined in football teams, etc. And from then on in, yeah, it was just fantastic. Really enjoyed my childhood.
Was it quite insecure being the son of a footballer and not knowing kind of whether you're coming on?
Yeah, we went Liverpool, not to Nottingham. My dad played for Bristol City, so it ended up down in Portishead. Then we moved back to Hibs. My dad moved back to Hibs with George Best in the 80s. So we moved back to Edinburgh for a year. And even, the little story regarding that, I remember playing out the back. My mum and dad rented the house in Buxton. I remember George Best coming up for tea and playing out the back with him with the ball. So I was maybe 8-year-old, just passing backwards and forwards to him. He was my dad and him got on well. And I think he was living in a hotel at the time. My dad invited him up for tea, and I just remember just as if he was a normal person, And as I got a little bit older, realised kind of, the star player that he was. But yeah, so that was just normal for me. So yeah, and then we moved to Glasgow. My dad was manager of Partick Thistle. Then we moved out to Cyprus. Who's manager of Northeast Famagusta. So it was difficult to make friends, real good friends at that point, because every 2-3 years you were moving. We went to about 6 or 7 different schools as well. So yeah, from that kind of 1 to 13, it was pretty difficult to be honest. But, looking back, I wouldn't have done it any other way. It was, just the experience it gave me, even just in business world now. So I think it's probably helped me so much.
So you settled down in Edinburgh at that point when you're 13. Was that kind of a conscious decision that you're putting roots down now?
Yeah, I think mum and dad appreciated myself and my sister going to secondary school. Wanted to settle in Edinburgh. My grandparents were from Edinburgh, both sets. So yeah, just it was probably just I was being at secondary school. My dad got assistant manager's job at Hibs with Alec Miller. So I went to Portobello High. And yeah, from 13, I met my friends I'm still friends with now, and joined kind of, youth football programs. But it was just full of football constantly. I played for the BBs. So I would play Saturday morning for the BBs, 10th Leith. We had a really, really strong team. And I'd maybe play for the school Saturday afternoon. Again, we had a really good team. Jackie McNamara and myself were the two that went on to make it. We had a really good team, and then I played for Hutchie Vale on a Sunday. So it was just that's all I wanted to do was play football. And yeah, I've been in Edinburgh ever since, other than kind of, when I moved to Newcastle. I've still got the friends that we, made when we were 13, 14, which was amazing.
What was it like coming into football when your dad is such a big name?
It's difficult. It brings an added pressure. I think just with Dad being, at the elite level, there was an expectation that, I would kind of be at that level as well. And I found it hard at times. When I was kind of, 13, 14, 15, everybody kind of referred me as Peter's son. But I got, you actually get used to it. And I've had such a determination, and probably, you speak to people that maybe know me, my attitude was always just the best it could possibly be. I've kind of no regrets about my football, tried my hardest, and every training session and every game, probably too much. I was probably trying to impress people too much just to be kind of at the level of my dad. But yeah, it did bring that added pressure. Let's still look at scrapbooks that I've got, and everything's referred to Pete Cormack, son of Liverpool legend. Every article. So I kind of never really got that. Probably credit, myself, but yeah, wouldn't change it. It was just had some plus points as well, as I'll tell you about as we move through.
Did you ever consider kind of going by your middle name? What was the impact? So let me ask two questions. So, one, what's it like in the house having the same name as your dad?
Yeah, I don't know why my mum done that. I think I was maybe called Freddie. My dad was at the World Cup '74 when I was born, and I don't think they named me till 3 weeks after till he got home. But I was meant to be called Freddie Cormack, and then just when my dad come back, we'll call him Peter. Which my granddad was called Peter Cormack as well, so I'm actually Pete Cormack the third. So yeah, I got used to it. As I say, it kind of brought pressure. My dad was kind of recognisable as well. So when we were growing up, there was always people coming for autographs. Not so much photos in those days, but it was autographs, and we just got used to it. It was my dad. I wasn't phased by it, and yeah, it was quite nice actually in a way to try and follow in his footsteps. I remember when I did play for Newcastle, we got issued the Premier League tops and Cormac 27, and just like really cool name to have on top. So I don't think I would go by my middle name now.
So you played youth football at Hudgy Vale alongside some other kind of well-known names from the Meadowbank story. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so that's when I first came across Yano. So we were both probably about 13. We used to actually get picked up in the same car, taken to Forge Road, which is just next to Stockton. So Yano and I shared the car, and I think it was maybe one of the dads at the time or one of the coaches picked us up. So we played youth football together right through to under 16s. Good side. We competed with Alan Combe, who went on to play in goals for St Mirren and Kilmarnock. Yeah, so Comey was in goals. We had Graham Love that played with Hibs, and myself. We had Yano and 2 or 3 others that were in kind of pro youth systems at the time. So we were good. Yeah, we were kind of probably one of the best youth teams at the time, along with kind of Musselburgh Windsor. But actually, it was great. It was great sort of. We got taken to Canada to play in tournaments. We got taken to Sweden, the Gothia Cup. It was every summer we got taken away somewhere. But yeah, myself and Jano, so we've kind of known each other since we've probably been 13. And he was always that small, even smaller than what he is just now.
He still looks the same age though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Hence his nickname, the Bairn. That's what he was christened at Meadowbank when he first joined. But good player. You could even tell at that time he played in that sort of number 10 up front, and just with his back to goal, he was always comfortable, and you could tell that he would probably go and play at some level, even when he was sort of 14, 15, he would score the goals. And we've been good friends ever since. We've kind of still see each other at the reunion and give each other a warm embrace, and yeah, it's a really good lad, really get on well with him.
I mean, listeners will have hopefully heard the interview with him a couple of weeks back. So, were you interested did you catch the attention of any pro clubs at this kind of time? Or
I was like, yeah, I was in. So in those days, again, it was kind of S forms. So you very much played with Hutchie. I was in at Hibs training with them. I think it was once a week. Hearts were always kind of quite keen on me as well. So there was always clubs and scouts coming to these games because we were, a good youth team. To be honest, I always wanted to be a footballer, always. But my dad, being in the game, said that, basically until I passed my exams at school, I wasn't going to go into a full-time program anywhere. I remember kind of, when sort of 14, 15, I wouldn't say arguments with him, but him and my mum and dad were, just so strict on that, education was first. They wanted me to do my exams, and, a lot of my friends were going into sort of YTS programs at 15, and they're leaving school at 14 into the clubs. You'd go into the ground staff, you'd have your chores, plus you'd get to train every day. My dad was very strict on that wasn't an option for me. But despite, getting an opportunity, there was various offers to go into full-time clubs, but at that time he just wanted to continue doing my exams and maybe, play part-time. And to be honest, that couldn't have worked any better when Meadowbank come calling.
Yes, I mean, it timed perfectly, really. You guys are turning 16 and Meadowbank started with the reserve team. What was the first first you heard of Meadowbank being interested?
Yeah, well, we played, I think Jan and I played in 3 finals with Hutchie towards the end of when we were 15. We actually got beaten all 3 of them, and there was quite a lot of scouts. I think it was Donald Park was watching one of the games. I'd done well, played well. I was always captain of Hutchie as well. I'd done well, and I remember Donald speaking to my dad after the game and, asking, I think it was myself and Jano asking us to come into, well, would we be interested in coming in? I think Stenhousemuir were keen as well. They were setting a reserve team up as well. And just with it being local, my parents' house is in Craigentinney. Still is. So literally I could walk to Meadowbank Stadium within sort of 10, 15 minutes. So it was actually Donald Park that signed me. And I'd just turned 16, and yeah, he was fantastic with us. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, so you played in the first ever reserve team game, a friendly against AVU amateurs. Do you recall that particular match?
Vaguely, I remember lots of games, but I vaguely remember that one. I think, they were just assembling the team. The likes of Stephen Ellison was in goal, Simon Scott right back, Tommy Graham, who I used to pair with at centre half, and Mark Duffy, Yano, Mark Hutchison, etc. So that was the first time we'd got together as a group. So I vaguely remember that game, but I kind of, remember games after that, and we were good. We were a really good side actually. A lot of the boys actually went on to play in the first team.
So did the reserve team train separately, or was it kind of balanced?
It was so very much everybody was together, and I actually was I just turned 16, and just remember being warmly accepted into the changing room. I think there was 2 changing rooms at the time, so it was just a mixture. So I was in with the likes of real experienced pros, Stuart Williamson, obviously Louis, Davy, Roseborough, Alan Banks, kind of all these boys. It was, I think that's how we're still all really, really good friends now. We meet up at the golf events. I was the youngest by miles, myself and Yano, but we were very much kind of, respected in terms of they've obviously seen that we're good lads. Had a potential to maybe play at a higher level. It was just brilliant, and we all trained together. So Terry, it was Tuesday, Thursday evenings. Often the reserve games were on a Wednesday, but yeah, it was very much a group mentality. We trained with the first team. All the time, and 7-a-side games, and just on the AstroTurf at the side of Meadowbank. So it was great, because I was, as I say, 16, to train with real experienced pros. It was also, just the camaraderie was brilliant at the club.
Yeah, so talk to me a bit more about the kind of the atmosphere between you young guys, because obviously, like you say, all those names you've listed went on to play loads of games in the first team.
Yeah, so the first season, okay, it was strange because I was, as I said, only 16, but it made me captain of the reserves. So I was captain for the 2 years I was at the club, and you've got guys sort of 19, 20, a lot older than me, and it was just a real good kind of vibe about the place. I always remember as well the guys that weren't in the first team squad on a Saturday. Parky used to have us in to train. We basically trained on Saturday morning at 9:30, and then Parky would set up sort of, shooting drills, etc. Basically, there was maybe sort of 8 or 9 of us, and then we used to get in a car, and Parky had the West End Hotel. So he owned that with George Mackey at the time. So he used to take us in there, all the boys were shut and tied, ready for the game, and he used to go and cook us chicken and chips or fish and chips. And basically, it was amazing with us, I mean, he used to have 9 lads sat. We used to have a juice and can of juice and basically fried chicken and chips. And then we used to get in the cars to go and watch the first team. And he done that with us sort of every second Saturday for the guys that weren't in the first team squad. So I remember that. But even that itself was good fun. As a 15, 16-year-old lad, it was really good fun. And Parky made that. He was brilliant with the young lads. And I still see Parky now as well. We have exchanged some stories, and he still is funny.
So you got those experienced guys from the first team coming down. Just looking at that first season, I mean, John McCormack played quite a few games in the reserves. Brian McNaughton, Alan Prentice, Stuart Williamson. Were there any guys that particularly kind of put their arm around you and really helped you with your playing side?
Yeah, they probably Stuart Williamson. I used to kind of often play double centre half with Stuart when Tam Graham was injured. I used to either play left back or left centre half in the reserves. So I remember Stuart, always kind of talking to me. Walter Boyd as well. What he would. He's a sort of great player, just so calm, really kind of assured. So you would always play the games, and we would be playing, up at Dents Park against Dundee. We'd be playing Dundee United, so we would be playing some decent teams, Dunfermline, Falkirks, and you'd always have a mixture. So there would be maybe 6 or 7 younger lads, and there would always be a blend of maybe 3 or 4 kind of senior pros. I remember one game that I played with Watty Boyd, and he just calmly spoke to me throughout the game and was very composed on the ball. And I like to play as well. I was very much kind of, my dad used to always say, try and get the ball off the goalkeeper. So I used to always demand it off early, the edge of the box, and try and actually get the play going, get into midfield. Myself and Walter, it was easy, cruising through games. So we played several games together, and I just found it really, really easy just playing with him. He just used to speak to me, tell me where to be positional wise. So a lot you learned so much, and you were playing against some really, really good players as well. Often these reserve teams had guys coming back from injury, maybe coming back from suspension, and we're playing against Mixu Patalainen. And I was just a skinny 16-year-old, and he was battering me about all over the place. But afterwards, you kind of learn how to play against that physical person. And then next time I played against Colin West at Dundee. He was an absolute flying machine. He kept actually running at me one-on-one, and you soon learn. You've got to learn, or you kind of won't be invited back next week. So it was a great experience. Probably looking back at some good games, at some bad games, but that was the expectation of 16. But I went from youth football into men's football really quite quickly. I got thrown in at the deep end, a lot along with Jano. Jano went into the first team a little bit quicker than myself.
Yes, I mean, you're both quite early in the season called up to Scotland under 18s. Talk to me about.
It was so I kind of made huge improvements from 16 to 17. I started to get more physical. I grew to, I'm 6'1" now, so I kind of grew a little bit, and was starting to play consistently well in the reserves. Starting to get noted at this point, despite not playing in the first team. But I was starting to get recognised by other people, and there was certain scouts coming to watch, and again, I found all that positive, and that even from the end of the first season, there was scouts actually, there was discussion of me kind of moving on quite early. But I was still at school, and it suited me. I was still doing my hires at school. I was getting paid to play professional football, which I actually. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say, but I actually was thrilled. I was getting something like £38 a week, and I was getting £14 expenses. And I think it was every Thursday got an envelope, brown envelope, and sort of the club would that's how they paid you, and it was brilliant. I was 16-year-old, got the bus home, £50 in my pocket for playing football, and it was just absolutely fantastic. Loved it. So the Scotland thing came about. I think Craig Brown came to watch. He was the coach, him and Ross Matthew. Ross Matthew knew me from sort of schoolboy football, because I got into Edinburgh schools, got into Lothian schools as well. Played there in my final season when I was playing for Hutchie. And then I got Scotland schoolboy trials. I think maybe I got letters upstairs. I think I maybe got to the last 32. So Ross Matthew was the manager. So I was kind of known. And then obviously that season I started to do really, really well. And I think Craig Brown came to watch one of the games that Jano and I played in. We got called up to the under-18 squad, and I believe we were the only 2 part-time players in the squad. It was kind of, you had Colin McKay, Man United, Christian Daly was breaking into the Dundee United first team. there's boys from Celtic and Rangers and myself and Yano. Yeah, I remember getting a daily record in Scotland under-18s, Cormack, Meadowbank Thistle, Ian Little, Meadowbank Thistle. Pretty cool when you think of it. So we went on and got several caps under-18s, and we played against some just amazing players. Both of us actually started. We started in all the games as well, Yano and I. So we played against Italy, Belgium, Holland, and Poland. That was kind of sort of 4 games of that season. Both of us actually started in all the games. I don't think we got beat, actually. So, yeah, we made a good account for ourselves, being only part-time.
And so, coming to the end of that first season, you did get your first team debut. What do you remember of that?
Yeah, I remember probably the build-up to it. I used to actually tap Terry, because Terry, and I kind of was playing every week. I was captain of the reserves, and I wasn't kind of scared that I'd really kind of blossomed as a sort of player, and grown up as a person as well. And I remember my dad sort of saying, he used to always be influenced by my dad, and he said to me, "Go and tap his door and ask him why you've not been playing." Club, I remember at the time there was maybe a wee bit inconsistency, and I thought, so I actually remember tapping his door. So I was only 16, tapped his door, and he come, and Terry was brilliant with me. Sat down, and I'm sure at the time he had a reason why I hadn't been playing, because I actually asked him, "So I want to play in your first team," and he probably, if you imagine being a manager as well, it's probably difficult to introduce a 16-year-old at the back. Yano got in a little bit quicker. He was more offensive areas. Yano played kind of in number 10 and kind of, these kind of attacking areas, whereas if he loses the ball, it's not so punishing to the team. Whereas I was playing sort of centre-half, left back. We had Graham Armstrong on the left, 2 really experienced centre-halves, and it was probably a little bit more of a risk to put me in as a 16-year-old, despite, I probably could have actually done really capably well at that time. So I remember tapping him, and he said, "Oh, just bide with me." He says, "You get your opportunity." And yeah, I remember being a Thursday, I think it was a Thursday at training, and I think it was maybe the second last game of the season. He said, "You told me that you're going to play." The press got a hold of this, and it was kind of all in, I think it was a pink newspaper, and so 16-year-old's going to make his debut. There was a picture of myself and my dad, and I remember the game. I remember it really, really well. Played double centre, so the back 4. So I was the youngest. I had Jim McQueen in goals, who was coming to probably latter stages of his career. We had Louis left back, Tam Hendry right back, and Derek Grant. So we had sort of 4 really, really experienced guys around me. And there was another bit in the paper about Tam. I think Tam made his debut and I hadn't been born. So I don't know whether Tam kind of enjoyed that article. But so Tam, he was kind of probably 39, 40. I remember the game. It was 1 each, and think I done all right. I think I played pretty well. Was confident. Got the ball off Jim every opportunity. Went and won all the headers, and I just played off him a little bit on the left hand side, and I remember doing reasonably well, and I think Terry was happy with me, and just the feeling afterwards, was amazing, because just play first team football, that's what I tell my boys, but they all played in Division 1 at 16, so it was quite cool. So yeah, proud moment, and the whole family, I remember them being there. So it was pretty cool.
So you were a reserve team player of the year again at 16. That's a big vote of confidence.
Yeah, it was some day that, because it was actually the presentation was after that game, and yeah, I think I got young players player of the year and reserve team player of the year. So it fulfilled a nice first season for me. And then I was in the squad. The next game was against Falkirk, and Falkirk, I think they had already won the league. So there was maybe a 10,000 in at Brockville. So I think I was 14th man at that. So I actually thought I was going to play, but I think they thought, they say they had Simon Steinrod and kind of, real top players playing for them. So I think Terry just left me out because of lack of experience. But so it was all that happened within the space of 2 weeks to get, the Player of the Year trophy. I think it's still in my dad's cabinet. My dad's got this big cabinet in the living room with all his trophies in, and I'm sure that Player of the Year award is in there somewhere. So it was, nice to be able to, nice to be able to get that after my first season at sort of professional football. It's quite cool.
So you've seen Ian Little break into the team and kind of play 30-odd games. Are you thinking, right, next year, I'm next?
Yeah, 100%. I think you have to think like that as a footballer. I was always pretty confident in my ability. So I went away pre-season and I remember coming back absolutely flying. I was one thing, I was really, really fit. I could run all day. And I remember doing the pre-season Arthur seat and all the runs were set up and I would just lead the runs and, do kind of the lap of Arthur seat. I was doing that in probably 17 minutes. I was taking some guys, 25, 30 minutes. And
Shame.
yeah, there was a few slow ones to be honest. I remember actually coming over Arthur Seat down kind of the split. There's a split, and I remember Terry, Mickey Lawson, and Parky with the stopwatches, and I was first over the line. So I kind of, and by a good distance actually, I was really kind of fit at the time. And I just basically wanted to prove to give me a chance. I think I played a couple of times in the pre-season friendlies and actually played me. I remember one game centre midfield because I come on that much in terms of my sort of physical side of things. So they played me in centre midfield. It was against I think it was Newton Ground Star, and done okay. And I thought that I would probably get the opportunity the second season. Again, the reserve team had changed a wee bit. There'd been a kind of few new players brought in, and I went another season just playing reserve team football. But what Terry did do, to be honest, he included me in the squad. So basically, on a Thursday after training, there used to be the squad that went up just on an A4 sheet of paper, and it was basically just Stuart Williamson, Dave Rose, Barron Banks. And Terry always included me, so I was always the 14th man. Back then, it was like two subs. I was always 14th man, and I was happy with that. Travel with the squad, shirt and tie on the bus away games. I remember kind of when the bus arrived, I used to help Peter with the kit and, the hampers with the kits, etc. And I was involved. That's all kind of, I wanted to play, but I was still involved with the team, and kind of on match days was in the changing room. Terry would read the team and kind of I would be left out. It happened until kind of, I think it was again one of the second last game of the season. But I was fine. I was okay with that because I was playing reserve team football. It was good. I was only 17 still at the time. But I was involved with the first team guys literally, every Saturday that whole second season.
Yeah, so you were named reserve team player of the year for a second season in a row. Is that a bit of a backhanded compliment, getting that award twice in a row when you've only played in the first team twice?
Yes, probably. You need to maybe ask Terry why he never played me because again there was a couple of the boys will probably tell you better. I'm sure they got beat maybe 7-0 against Ayr away. I think it was 7-0, and I think I was maybe going to play the following Saturday, but again I got called up to Scotland. So it was quite weird because I had, I was playing international football. There was scouts kind of, at this point getting in touch with my dad, talking kind of Premier League teams in England, and I, couldn't get a game in the first team. So that was probably a wee bit frustrating at the time, but I was playing I got 2 years in a row, got Player of the Year for the reserve, so I was obviously playing well as well. But and again, Ted would probably answer that better than me. But I do get it now, coming to the age that I am. If I were a manager, you're going to put a 16, 17-year-old in at centre half. Coming back to my point, you possibly on an odd occasional game, I probably should have played a little bit more than I did. It worked out. It worked out for me. So I've kind of no regrets. I didn't sort of ever chuck my toys out the pram as well. My attitude was, as I said at the start, I just always wanted to be a professional footballer. My determination and will and drive. So I never really I just wanted to play. I never really let that bother me, to be honest. And it worked out in the end for me.
Super. So, I mean, you've played all these games for the reserves, and I know I've heard stories of kind of
unusual trialists turning up for the odd game, the odd training session. Do you remember any particularly good or bad ones?
At Meadowbank, I can't really. Yeah, they were just that. I mean, I remember sort of a rotation of players and two or three being brought in. But did you know, I was probably so focused on my own game then that you're not being arrogant, but I wasn't really bothered about other people as well. And I think that's what allows you to, I was looking at stat. We do lots of work with players now, and there's a 1% chance of players coming into pro youth academy making it into the first team now. And it's always been the case. It's always been, 250 million, you've got a better chance of winning the lottery. So I was kind of very much focused on myself. And I remember one or two bad players at Abbey went on at other clubs, but Meadowbank, it was a really good, strong team. And as I said, most of the lads that played in the reserve team, they probably, went on to play at some point in the first team, which shows you, good work that Parky done and kind of the recruitment side of things, which is so important with football, particularly these days. Recruitment, you have to get it right. Whereas we were just a bunch of local lads. I used to drive when I was 17. I passed my test, and it was myself and Simon Scott lived in the same area. Simon had this, he won't mind me saying, it was an old battered Fiesta. Simon used to give me a shot of his car when I first passed my test, basically. And say he would sometimes have a couple of beers after the Saturday's game. Go and drive me home, Peter. So I'd get to drive his car home from West End of town and dump his car outside his parents' house. So yeah, it was just local lads, all the boys were from Leith and sort of the surrounding area, and it was brilliant. Yeah, it was such a good fun. So it was most enjoyable.
So you actually played in Terry Christie's last game as Meadowbank manager. Did it feel significant at the time?
I'm trying to think, was that against Hamilton? Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
So it was probably, I think I
You
played
came
in
off the
that.
bench.
Yeah, there was a big crowd came on against George McCluskey, and George had played 300 games for Celtic, and I remember doing really well against them and having a good second. I played the second half, and again, probably just with me being so youthful, weren't aware of the politics of the club at the time, and I was kind of very much oblivious to that, and I still sort of speak with Terry. We've connected on Facebook, etc. And he gave me the opportunity, and I've always be grateful for that. But yeah, we were kind of, as players, you very much last to know actually that there's maybe going to be a change of management or change of coaching. But Terry was always great with me. I was kind of in Yano. We always got slagged that we were the blue-eyed boys of Terry's squads, and we always got treated well, and we were the two big assets of the club at the time. And so we used to get a wee bit slagging off the older team that we were the blue-eyed boys. But I wasn't aware that Terry was about to sort of stand down at that time.
So you've had 2 seasons in the reserves. What advice are you getting about your career? A, from your dad, and B, from other people?
Yeah, so basically as I said, I stayed on at school. So I was playing 5th year, 6th year. I managed to stayed on the whole of 6th year. And I done really well in my exams and got my highs. I actually got an A level as well. So kind of mum and dad were happy with that when I was just about turning 18. So that was I played against Hamilton in the first team, and at that point I was leaving school anyway. So my dad was very much said to me, "You can go into full-time football now if you get the opportunity." So that's kind of after that, that's how things all start to develop. And I'd signed. I knew, and throughout, I think there was maybe various off bids for us, but for me and Jano at the same time. Like I heard rumours, and I don't know whether they were true, because again, you don't get to find out the ins and outs. But I think there was a few clubs maybe made an offer for both of us as a pair, and I think maybe the club turned these offers down. I don't know, but it was, my focus was on very much full-time football. It was kind of perfect timing for me. I was still playing in the Scotland Youth setup. I knew I got invited, so I actually signed a 2-year contract with, because I'd signed a 2-year deal when I was 16 to 18, and I just signed a new 2-year deal at the club to stay at Meadowbank, which I was happy to do, and I kind of was thought I would have broke into the first team the next again season. And I got invited by Dundee United to play in an international tournament. Because they were interested in signing me. So, and Meadowbank allowed me to go, and this was the summer after the season, and it was a really, really strong. It was under 19s, and it was really strong Dundee United team. So it was Gary Boland, Christian Daly, Andy McLaren, Robbie Winters. So really, really strong team. So I actually went across to Holland and played in an international tournament. So we played against Barcelona, we played against Feyenoord, played against Ajax, played against Ghana's national team. We've done really, really well in that tournament, and I played every game. Dundee United, when I got back, it was Paul Sturrock who was the manager of the youth team. I think contacted the club, and they were trying to work out, a deal in terms of getting me to go, and it just all kind of took off from there. Really, then there was rumours of teams down south that were interested, and that's how the move to Newcastle kind of came about. So it all happened quite quickly, actually.
What was the first you heard of Newcastle being interested?
Again, I think I went. I had a holiday booked. This was my first lads' holiday, with my 3 pals, and it was kind of I wasn't sure whether I should go. I went to Gran Canaria, and it was my mum and dad said, you need to go on holiday, and so I went away on holiday, and Newcastle got in touch with my parents and the Meadowbank at the time while I was on holiday. So I literally always remember I got back. I think I got back on, say, the Thursday, and literally I was one night, and then the next again day I was in my dad's car, and then we were driving down to St James's Park, and it just happened so quick. I remember having a bag full of clothing and my trainers and my boots, and turned up at St James's Park. We're in the car park. Terry McDermott and Kevin Keegan were there, and they just signed Robert Lee. So Robert Lee had just signed for 650,000, and just signed John Beresford from Portsmouth as well. So basically, I remember going up the stairs, and I think the deal had been organised with Meadowbank. Got taken into a room, and just I was kind of signed a contract. So I signed a 2-year deal, and next one I'm kind of in the Gosforth Park Hotel, along with John Beresford and Robert Lee, and we were the 3 kind of summer signings. And so it just it all happened as it does in football. You generally find that these type of things happen within 20. I'm not entirely sure of the fee that was paid. And again, Terry Parky, it was actually Donald Park that let me go. And Parky phoned me up. I remember there was no mobiles then, and Parky phoned me up and just said, "Listen, would never stand in your way." He said, "You've got an opportunity for full-time football, a huge club." I think they probably made the highest offer for me. Yeah, it was I wouldn't say my life changed overnight, but it was just, I went from kind of part-time, where, and the fans at Meadowbank Thistle were always fantastic, but there was maybe a pocket of 350 fans. 2, I was doing pre-season, and pre-season we used to, the club, my first season, they were in the championship, and the first season we trained, or for the first few months, we trained at a place called Benwell, which was in the city centre. It would have 5,000 people. So it was 6,000 people turning up for pre-season to watch. So it got too much. You couldn't actually, as a player, you couldn't get your car into the car park because there was that many fans coming to watch pre-season. So they moved the training ground out to Maiden Castle in Durham, which was kind of like a university. It was like a cricket ground. And they moved us out there just to give us some privacy because there was too many people turning up. And I remember one of my first training sessions, there was a rope round 2 of the pitches, and literally there's just thousands of fans watching us do a pre-season training. So I went from, as I said, playing in front of a handful of people to, training in front of kind of 5,000, Geordies that were absolutely off the head. So it was amazing. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because, that's just an opportunity they gave me and just that platform. It was good fun.
It's impossible not to make a comparison. So are you thinking I'm the next Darren Jackson?
Yes, I was, so at the time I was really confident that, so basically Newcastle, the conversation they had with me was that I was one of the best youth players that they had on the books. And we've got articles in the papers where Keegan's actually came out and said that Pete Cormack is better than the youth players we've got at the club already. So I was confident, and I could play, because of my age, I could play under 19s, so I could play in a youth team. So I was captain of the youth team, and then I could play reserve team football. And so, I went down on the basis that I was going to be a Newcastle United player for the next 6 years and play X amount of games in the first team. Yeah, it was quick. Step up was enormous. Youth team football, I was okay. I was comfortable. I held my own. But when we went into the reserves, the step up was massive. We were playing against often, England internationals that were coming back from injury, and you were playing, played at Anfield, played at Goodison Park, played at Leicester, played at kind of all the big clubs, and reserve team fixtures. It was kind of 6 or 7 sort of first team players at the elite level, so you had to learn quickly. First season, done really well. They moved me out to left back, just found sort of in the middle. It was that I was a little bit more comfortable at left back at that level, and I adapted quite quickly. And actually remember playing against Sunderland, and there was 26,000 watching the reserves at St James's Park. So, and a couple, my mates came down to watch me, and they couldn't get in. The kickoff got delayed 15 minutes. And the rivalry between these two teams is immense at first team level and reserve team level. So you get the opportunity to play 26,000, and I set up the second goal for us, and played, I thrived in it, absolutely thrived in it, and played with some just guys that went on to be England internationals, which was pretty amazing.
I was going to ask what was the biggest difference between Meadowbank and Newcastle. I think it's clearly the crowds. But what were the big differences on a day-to-day basis in terms of training and match days?
Yeah, so what you've got to adjust to. I was part-time. I was at school at Meadowbank, trained a Tuesday and a Thursday, and then I went into the full-time program, and that takes an adjustment. It took me a good probably 6 months to find my feet physically. The demands of training every single day, other than a Wednesday, playing with pressurized situations, playing in front of crowds, which I'd never experienced before, and so all of that takes a huge adjustment, and it did. I kind of, probably looking back, and this is me being really honest with myself, I probably was overawed with it all, and it was something that as a kid I always wanted so much to do what I was doing, but I was kind of overawed with it. And the club, and often people speak to me about this, the club at the time just went catastrophic. They just went through the roof in terms of, first season they won the championship, second season it was the start of the Premier League era. So this was kind of 94, 95. So they were signing all these players, and it was Sky Sports was the cameras were there all the time. Players were, it was Spice Girls, it was Take That, it was kind of Jamiroquai, all that pop culture. All these players were becoming sort of bit celebrities and personalities, the David Beckhams and kind of all the Man United lads. And I probably was overawed with it, and looking back, would the move, I often question myself, would the move to maybe have Dundee United be a better platform for me? Because I probably would have went in there, maybe established myself after 2-3 years into their first team, and found myself in a situation where they were signing, left backs and centre halves for 6-7 million. So I'm there, kid, sort of 19-year-old at the time, and it just, probably passed me by a wee bit, and it was difficult. And it was just that time the club finished second in the Premier League to Man United, and football was just incredible, but it gave me that experience of possession-based football from which I'll move on to. It didn't really help me as I come back into the Scottish leagues, because I got, for 2 years we got taught basically keep ball possession, nice quick football, attack and play, and there wasn't any kind of long ball stuff. You actually got a route if you played the ball long. It was kind of very much learning my trade, and I've become a much better footballer. But it kind of didn't help as I progressed in my career when I went back to Scotland, when it was very much kind of back to front. So I found it, but the club Newcastle were just a phenomenal football club, and brilliant to be part of it during that time.
Talk to me about Kevin Keegan.
So Kevin's, for being quite a small man. So Kevin's probably 5'8", 5'9", but just a very, very imposing figure, and you come across certain people during your life in sport and maybe that are reckoned, famous, just an aura about him. He would come into a room and the changing room, he'd come in and it would just be silence, deathly silence, and he had an aura about him, kind of basically superstar aura. There's other people that I've met, lucky enough to meet, that are similar. David Ginola was another one. David used to come in, shoulder pushed back, and just oozed class and just as an aura. And these guys, they just carry themselves really, really well. European Footballer of the Year 2 years in a row, Kevin was, and he was just well respected, and he was a god as well. He was literally would come out and be absolutely surrounded by 50 people well after his autograph, and he just took everything in his stride. Very charismatic. He was good. He was good with me. He was very honest at all times. When I was struggling a wee bit, he would tell me. When I was doing well, he would tell me. Man management was skills were excellent, and he had an amazing team. Some of the players that he managed to recruit and gel together. They were probably the best team in sort of Britain at the time, in terms of their attacking style football. And it was all just gun the hole. It was probably a bit like Jurgen Klopp with Liverpool, how he used to play, 4 up front basically. If you score 3, we'll score 4. It was kind of that. That's how we wanted to play. And training was the same.
Did you spend a lot of time with the first team?
Yeah, all the time. Yes. I said at the start, I got issued. I was original 27 at Newcastle, so that was my squad number. I think when I left, Philip Albert took my top. So I was 27, and yeah, it was a bit like Meadowbank in that probably the early part of the week we were all together. So it was a squad of 30 professionals. So we were, and they would say you probably had 5 injured at the time. So there'd always be a squad of maybe 24 to get two sets of 12 and 6-a-side games. So yeah, so it was constant. And then towards the tail end of the week, maybe a Friday, the actual team that we're playing against, the opposition on Saturday, they maybe split up from the rest of the group. So I was training regular basis with the likes of against Peter Beardsley, Andy Cole, Barry Venison, Rob Lee went on to play for England, John Beresford went on to play for England, goalkeepers Pavel Cernacek, Tommy Wright, Kevin Sheedy was playing at the time, Kevin Brock, Brian Kilcline was centre half, like 6'5" unit. So it was basically, you had to hold yourself. If you weren't up to it, you get told playing with these guys, because most of them were sort of world class players. It was a joy to you give them the ball and they wouldn't lose it. So I used to just keep it nice and simple, play 1-2 touch, and make myself kind of look competent and good, and give it to guys like Peter Beardsley, who could sort of dribble past 2-3 guys and put it in the top corner. So you could only, if you didn't learn from these guys, wasting your time being there. And so yeah, it was just an amazing time. Some great players.
I mean, you must have some stories from when these guys have come down and played in the reserves.
Yeah, I got on so good friends with Robbie Elliott. And so Rob went on to play in the first team, moved to Bolton, Alan Thompson, and we were all similar ages, Steve Watson, Lee Clark, Steve Howie. So that was our group of, there was 4 or 5 of us that socialised together away from training. And we were kind of the young lads of the squad of sort of 20 at the time. And it was, yeah, our reserve team was ridiculous. Once you had kind of some of the bigger players coming in, and often so when I did move second season, moved to centre half, I'd played double centre half with Steve Howie, and Steve, similar to Alan Hansen, probably one of the best players I played alongside. He just comes strolling out with the ball and kind of playing into midfield and join in, and so it was great. Yeah. So yeah, and again, you were playing against, we played against David Beckham. I played against Paul Scholes, Vassell went on to play for England, and Jamie Redknapp at Liverpool, and kind of all these. You got to play against these in reserve fixtures, so it was it's pretty cool stuff.
Was Mark Lawrence in there at the same time as you, coaching?
No, he wasn't. So our coaches in the reserves was John Carver. So John's now assistant manager of Scotland. So John was there, and Colin Suggett. So Colin Suggett was really kind of highly regarded as one of the best youth coaches around at the time. So he was responsible for kind of the youth setup. John Carver was very much the reserve team manager at the time.
Yeah, like Mark Lawrence just popped into my head. I remember hearing an interview with him that he was at Newcastle.
He was there after, when I left.
And so you mentioned Steve Watson a couple of times. In your second season there, he is breaking into the first team. Was it were you competing with him?
Yeah, so basically the second season, so again, we've not really spoke about my unluckiness with injuries, because this was my first bad injury. I was pre-season, and I came back home to Scotland during the close season, and you've probably heard the guys, Bert Logan, George McNeil, the sprint coaches. So I would go up and do some sprint training with the lads for 2 weeks, all the Hearts boys. It was Craig Levine, Gary Mackay, Scott Crabb. So I would be allowed to join in with them, and I focused on my quickness and speed. So I actually came back pre-season really, really fit. And I was part of the first team squad, and we were, I was doing really well pre-season. Probably had went to the next level in terms of my fitness. I was told that I was going to play. It was Ali McCoist's testimonial. It was on the Wednesday night, and then it was Ronnie Whaling's testimonial on, I think it's Saturday at Anfield and Ibrox. I got told I would play in one of these games, and I think Newcastle were very much about, testing the young lads, chuck them in, see if they flourish, or you could soon find out whether they'd be able to play at that level. So I think that's what they were going to do with me. And we played, I always remember, we played a kind of 11v11. It was kind of shadow play, actually. And I was playing on the left-hand side, and they'd signed Mark Robinson for 1.2 million from Barnsley. Both of us clashed with each other, and basically went over on my ankle. Didn't feel good, and I tried to continue. My leg kept collapsing, and I ruptured all the ligaments in my ankle. So that was that pre-season, and I just was probably going to get that opportunity. So I ended up in plaster for, I think it was about 8 weeks, and then had to get rehab. So I didn't get back playing until it was probably around about the October time before I played a reserve game again, and which, speaking of the club, the trajectory was just continually going that way. And, they signed a couple more players at sort of the 10 million mark now. We're looking at players, so when I got back, that was probably my opportunity that went past. And football's like that. You get a good break, sometimes you get a little bit unluckiness. And for me, I got back and I played reserve team football, and there was rumour that I was going to go on loan to Celtic. I think Lou McCarry was the manager of Celtic at the time. He came to watch me against Nottingham Forest. I was meant to go, I think on loan there, but Newcastle didn't want me to go on loan at the time, and so I stayed and played reserve team football for another season, in which, like Steve Watson, he got the opportunity. Went in, him and Robbie. Robbie was left back. Steve was right back. They got their opportunity and they took it, and they become established pros at the club, and went on to have amazing careers. And do sometimes think that could have been me, but no, I've not got any regrets now. At the time, you're like, why did I not get the luck? But things are meant to be for a reason.
So so you say that the couple of spaces they've got for the young players have been taken up. The team's on this huge upward trajectory, and they've kind of got into the top flight, qualified for Europe straight away. Is the writing on the wall for you now?
Yeah, I think so. Do you know what happened? Keegan, and coming back to Keegan and his honesty, he had me, it was around about April time, and my contract was up in the June, and he took me in a room, and even though it was probably the most devastating news I heard as a footballer, over the because everything had been good, from the Meadowbank days, Player of the Year, Scotland, moved to Newcastle, the excitement of all that. So it was the first probably negative, other than that injury, it was the first negative I'd heard, and he took me in a room. He sat me down, and I kind of knew what was happening. And he said, yeah, I remember his words because I've spoken to him afterwards about it as well. And he said, we're scrapping the reserve team. We would love to keep you at the club because you're a great kid about the place, etc. But he says we're going to go with the best 24 players in Europe as a squad, and he said we don't see you in that squad at this moment in time. And I was listening and getting upset, thinking he was telling me I wasn't good enough, and so I left the meeting thinking he had said, right, you're not good enough to make it professionally. And I remember being absolutely devastated. I remember I had to train after that, and just tears streaming down my face. It was the first rejection that I had ever since, playing for Hutchie. It was kind of the club decided, and he done this with lots of players. He wanted to build, a squad of 23, 24 elite lads that could all play in his first team. And he just felt I probably wasn't ready, and I wasn't. I've always been really honest with myself about my football career, and we represent players now, and it's always be honest. And I probably, looking back, wasn't ready to play in their first team at that level, and so he was right in his decision, but it was hugely, hugely upsetting, and you just feel massively rejected. And I was like, what am I going to do with myself? And it was difficult to deal with, really, really hard, because I was still sort of a kid, still only 19. So you just got to rebuild yourself, and you go on that journey again, and you got to want it more than other people.
So your dad's assistant manager at Morton at this point.
Yeah.
Were you looking for any other options so that it didn't look like you kind of got that step up from your dad?
Yeah, there was a good few options. So I could have went to Brighton. So Liam Brady was the manager of Brighton, and Brighton, where they are now in the Premier League, they were, I think, on the verge of getting, relegated to Division 2. But I could have went to Brighton. Carlisle, Dave McCreary was the manager of Carlisle. They wanted me to go in there. Oldham, I had a chance to go, or could have signed for Oldham, and then Hearts, because I was doing a lot of training with the Hearts lads. So I think it was Alec MacDonald was the manager of Hearts, and Gary Mackay phoned me, who I know really well, and Gary sort of sounded me out about joining Hearts. So there was quite a few options. And what happened with Morton, they were looking to recruit 2 or 3 players. Dad was obviously there, and he left the decision down to Alan McGraw. My dad had never interfered in my career. Ever, even youth football, he would never try and coach me or tell me what to do. He was very much, and I think he respected that, he could create hassle for me in terms of the person, the name he was. So my dad was very much sort of back, we used to get in the car and say, "Did you enjoy that?" "Yes, I did." "Oh, that's good, well done." And that was it. So he wasn't interfering. So he left it down to Alan McGraw. And I think it was the opportunity to play first team football and on a regular basis was the reason I went. They Morton were kind of, their remit was to get promoted after one season back to the Championship. So I kind of took the opportunity to come back up to Scotland. I was able to move back into my parents' house. And that's the way the deal came about. And, Morton at the time it was a free transfer. So I was able to negotiate a good deal for myself. It ended up a good deal for everybody, actually. So that was the reason I ended up at Morton.
Are the guys in the changing room thinking when the assistant manager's son comes in?
Yeah, the guys were great. I'm still friends with them. We had a reunion last Friday with all the boys. So it was 30 years since we won the league. So there was never any issue, because I was coming from Premier League team. I was 20. I actually got called up to Scotland under 21s at the time. So, as far as they were concerned, they were, a good, I think they thought, good players coming on board. We had a really kind of the makings of a really, really good team, which I'll come on to as we move through this. So yeah, there was never any. He's only signed because of his dad, and we've become really good friends. We're still friendly with them now. So no, I didn't get any animosity, and I sort of started pre-season. They knew that I was really serious, and I was the front runner again, done really well in the pre-season games. I think we played against Rangers in the pre-season, scored a penalty. And so I actually was playing in centre midfield when I first started. And I actually started well, and then as I went through a wee spell of not so well. Yeah, it worked out. It was okay for me. It was a decent enough move.
What's it like going into a changing room now where you're expected to be in the team in your age-wise, but you're one of the senior players in terms of you're going to be on the team sheet?
Yeah, and I was. I basically went in as a first team player, started the season, and it was the one thing I would say about my move to Morton, the fans were really, really hard to please. So basically, there was a focus on getting promoted first time back to the Championship. And we actually started the season pretty poorly. I was playing centre midfield with Alan Mahood, who had re-signed from Nottingham Forest, and had obviously signed me from Newcastle. So we were kind of the heart of the team. And being completely honest, found it difficult. And coming back to my point, I was trying to play too much. I was maybe getting caught on the ball a little bit too much, and I had to adapt my game because I came from higher level, but the football we were taught for 2.5, 3 years was all kind of 5-yard passes, go and get it back, and create really kind of short tempo stuff to basically back in Scottish football where you had somebody on you straight away. It was more about actually just getting the ball from a throw in and chest and hooking it on. So I had to adapt my game quite a bit. And the early part, it didn't start well for me, and that's me being honest. I was playing, taking free kicks and corners, and coming back to my dad always even don't show your fear, to get on the ball all the time, and hence me in my debut getting the ball off Jim for the goalkeeper to play out from the back and be brave on the ball. So I was probably taking that responsibility too much, and I was taking free kicks, corners, and I took a penalty, and it was the quarter final of the League Cup against the Airdrie. And I was pretty confident at penalties. I took it, and John Martin saved my penalty, and we went out the cup 5-4, I think it was. And that was the first taste of just the fans, getting nasty to me, and found it really tough.
Now, what was it like? So you've come from two clubs where you've been this promising youngster and everybody's probably building you up and being very supportive, and now you've got that pressure where you are the main man.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I didn't handle it too well. Again, I'll always be honest on these things. I found it really tough because there was then a little bit of the fans thinking I was there because of my dad. I was an easy target because the team weren't doing that well. I wasn't the worst player, but the team was struggling a little bit. And I found it difficult. And, football, sport in general, hugely down to confidence. I've not turned into a bad player overnight, but it is hugely down to confidence and the feel-good factor, and playing in front of the 20-odd thousand that are singing a song. You feel amazing. Your adrenaline is high, and you can do anything. And I found it really difficult. I probably lacked in confidence. The things that I was good at, I started to, wasn't doing them. I wasn't doing it. Wasn't passing the ball quick enough. Yeah, and I probably lost my confidence a wee bit and lost my way. And then you combine that, I stupidly went in for attack. Coming back to my point, I was always trying to justify my place in football. I feel trying too hard doesn't help. Going in for rash challenges, trying to demonstrate to the fans that you're committed, but going in for stupid challenges that were maybe 60-40 against me. So I did do that. I went in for a challenge, and it was just a ridiculous challenge against Dumbarton, and I broke my leg. Yeah, I broke my tibia, so I was out for about 9 months and had to get I still have terrible problems with my knee. I had to get a GK nail, so I had to get a nail put into my tibia. So I had to get operated on, and that was my season, my first season. That's how it kind of all ended. It wasn't a nice introduction to Greenock Morton.
And then on the pitch, things did pick up for the team.
Yeah,
And they missed out on promotion.
they did. Yeah. So what happened is they signed the team needed a rebalance, and they signed two Finnish internationals, Yanni Lindberg and Marko Radjamaki. So they signed them for big money. It was about 350,000 at the time. Yanni played centre midfield and it was fantastic. And I'll tell you the second season, because he was a huge help to me, huge help. And I actually seen him last Friday. They flew the Finns over for the reunion. It was actually we were chatting about sort of the help. He was so experienced and just kept the ball nice and calm, just held as a pivot in midfield. He was kind of like a number 6. And then Marko Radjamaki was a bit more of a maverick. He played on the wide left, long blonde hair, and he kind of was the one that got past 2-3, pop it in the top corner, and he'd go missing for half an hour, and then he would do the same again. They brought these two guys in. Derek Lilly, which was starting to do really well up front. Signed Warren Hawke, who had a lot of experience. Derek McInnes in midfield, who went on to Rangers. And Derek Collins, so the team started to gel. And they actually went on to win the league. The only kind of good thing I played, I got enough appearances in the sort of first quarter to get a medal. And so that was probably the only little sort of silver lining after that season for me.
Talk to me a bit about Alan McGraw.
Yeah, Alan was brilliant with me. I recovered from my injury. The club were good enough, sent me to Lilleshall. So I got back playing. So I've missed a big chunk. I missed about 9 months. Got back playing around about September time of season in the championship. And Alan was great. Alan was actually got me back fit, gave me my confidence back, and was always telling me, son, not playing in my team if you're a bad player. And he was just an old school, good manager, but very kind with it as well. He never kind of chucked the teacups in the air and shouted at people. He was very calm, very soothing, and he just used to take you into his room at his walking sticks, and he would just sit down, son, and say, this is what I want you to do. And he would kind of tell you, just simplify your game. He gave me my confidence back, to be honest. And he had a lot of sort of faith in me, put me back in around about September time. And after that, things started to turn for me, and I picked up, some form, started to feel comfortable playing in the championship, which was a good level, because we had Dundee United, Dunfermline, St Johnstone, Ross County, Inverness, Airdries. The league was really strong, and I just probably kept coming back to confidence. Got that back, and then I went on a run of probably playing 70, 80 games for the club at that level, and was playing regular, and I was pretty versatile as well. So my dad and McGraw would play me sort of centre midfield of a 3. I could play left wing back, left centre half. I'd go and man mark someday when we played against sort of some the top teams. I remember getting asked to man mark Robbie Winters, who was an absolute flying machine when we played Dundee United. George Boyle at St Johnstone, Fairland, we Northern Ireland international striker. Go and nullify them from the game. That was my job. And I started to do well, and that's when things changed a little bit in terms of the fans started to appreciate me a wee bit more.
And it helped when you scored the winner in the Redbridge derby.
Yeah, so I was basically, before that, I was actually playing well, to the point where there was teams starting to, the one thing with Morton, it was great for a platform to go to other teams. Derek Lilly went to Leeds for 500,000. Derek McInnes went to Rangers. Derek Collins went to Hibs, and there was teams starting to watch me again. And that in itself, gives you confidence. So I think Stoke and Bristol City rumoured to be kind of keeping an eye on me, and it was, these things are nice to do the world of good. So I was starting to do well, and 2 games before the derby, I'd set up a couple of goals, and so this was it was I think it was January the 30th, and it was a Wednesday night. The weather was crap. There was a full house at Love Street, and Morton take a huge fan base, so they had filled the hole behind the goal. So basically, the place was absolutely heaving, and my friends, 6 of my friends had went to this game, and they said it was one of the best atmospheres they've been in when I scored this goal. Still speak about it now. So the game was rubbish. I was playing centre midfield, and it was 0-0, and it was just a terrible game all around. And what happened? It was the 87th minute, and the ball came to me. I was 25 yards out, and I kind of remember now. Actually, ball got played into me, back to the goal. Managed to get onto my left foot, and I just struck it, and it went literally in the top corner. Like it's close to the extension as you could possibly find. I nearly ripped the net off, and it's probably one of the best goals I've scored. And the place, there was a pitch invasion, and I remember kind of getting pushed into the crowd, and I think I got booked, and it was just carnage. And my pals that we go out and have a beer, and they say it was one of the best football experiences they've ever had. And it was brilliant. So it was something that I dreamed of ever since playing in the back garden as a wee boy. 4 in the last minute, a really good goal. So I look back and think that my career probably didn't go as planned because of injuries. I've got little moments like that I can always kind of remember and rekindle. So it was pretty cool. And then after that, it was the fans completely reversed, and football fans are fickle. They really are. After that, I was basically a hero to this day. They still, social media is a good thing in terms of people on the anniversaries. They talk about the game, the best derby they've been at, the best goal they've seen, and And so the fans are fickle. And after that, it was they were the opposite. They had a chant for me in terms of my name, and that helped. I went on and I think I got 6 Player of the Year awards. So they went from, basically booing me one season to the next again season. I think I got 6 Player of the Year, the Supporters Club's Player of the Year awards. And I've still got them as memories. That was all kind of around about 96, 97. Yeah, so pretty cool. I kind of look at that as character building as well, and that was probably my determination, because you could have easily crumbled and done the opposite and said, right, I'm packing it in. And I didn't. I kind of turned it round, and, just through that sheer determination that I'm going to do this, I did. And after that, it got easy. It got easy, the game, and I went on. As I said, played another season, and my form was back, and I was playing at a good level, and I was actually fulfilling my dream of being a professional footballer.
Like working with your dad day to day?
My dad was just amazing, man. Was very much loved the lads, loved getting, looking after them, getting them together. He was a good coach, good man in mind. All the players respected him because of his career and, the level that he played at. So he was well regarded, and my dad, he didn't coach me too much. We played in different positions. I was more defensive, he was midfield, and there was a few occasions when I was younger, he would get coins out on the dining room table to speak to me about sort of positional play and maybe the offside rule when he probably thought, he's got a chance here. He would maybe speak to me about sort of what side of, when I was defending, what side I should be on of the pitch, having your the forward player on the left-hand side, so you were coming in with your strong foot. But he was well regarded. I had no regrets working with him. It was, nice to be able to say you've done that with your dad. After some results, the car would be silent on the way that 2.5 hour journey back to Edinburgh. Lots of silence as well. We didn't speak to each other. But yeah, and I remember when I did score that goal, he kind of afterwards came up, and all he done was went like that, patted me on the back of the head. Never said anything. Never says, just give me a wee pat on the back of the head as if, right, well done. Don't get too excited. Yeah, no regrets working with Dad. I look back now that he's not here, and it was pretty special time to be able to do that. Amazing.
What was the dressing room like in that period at Morton?
It was we had similar to Meadowbank lads. It was a good tight knit group. Some really kind of good players. We basically season we missed out on promotion to the Premier League, so the league was really tough. So we had this, as I said earlier, had the Dundee United, Dunfermline were a good team, St Johnstone, Ross County, Inverness. We basically were winning the league with the last game of the season, and we had to beat Dundee United at Capello. And again, there was, I think it was 17,000. The stadium was full. I think it was probably more than that in there, but we ended up drawing 2 each. So we missed out by a point to go to the Premier League. And we had a great team, good team spirit. Had Brian Reid, had David Wyling goals. We had Derek McInnes, as I said earlier, the two Finns. We had Alan Mahood was playing well at the time. We had Craig McPherson. So all guys that were, good, competent players. And then after that season, there was a few lads moved on to other clubs. So that was, we broke up a wee bit. But it was, you generally find teams that you're involved in is full of good lads, and there's always a mixture of characters. There's 2 or 3 that are absolutely off their head, and you've got sort of 2 or 3 that maybe a little bit quieter, and you've got the maturer ones and the idiots that are just off their head after Prussia. And you get that in a changing room. If you think you've got maybe 20 guys all training, every single day together, yeah, there's nothing but laughs. It's good fun.
So there came a time where Alan McGraw and your dad kind of move on.
Yeah.
And Billy Stark came in. How did he compare?
Yeah, he won't mind me saying I've spoke to Billy since with Billy was manager of Scotland under 21s. So recently, so we had a few players in that squad. Yeah, we didn't get on, and that's being honest. I started this season. I basically found it odd because I'd signed a new 2-year contract, and again the club tied me to 2 years because they knew that I was playing well enough to be an asset. I think they were after 350,000 for me to move. So they signed me on a new 2-year contract, which I just signed. Billy came in, done pre-season, was playing in his team, was doing okay. Coming with Frank Connor, and I basically kind of got a wee feeling. I played maybe the first 6 games, and I got a feeling that he had his own plans, with myself and Mark McGraw. Mark McGraw was there as well, so Alan McGraw's son. And both myself and Mark got the feeling that because of our dads being connected with the club, he wanted us out, and he'd done it in a way. Wasn't I'm always about honesty and speak, as a manager, and all the good managers are honest. Remember, I just told you about Kevin Keegan having me in a room. This is the situation, and that materialised. I felt there wasn't that, and he left me out. I was sub quite a few times, and I just got I felt I was getting kind of sort of pushed out the club a little bit, and he did. I eventually went in to see him, and he kind of just said, you're a great pro. And he says, I was 24, 25 at the time. I wasn't even at my kind of, shall we say, peak. There's still a lot more football in me. And he just said that, myself and Mark weren't going to be part of his plans. However, until there was a new club came in for me, he would still involve me, etc. So that's kind of what happened. So I was a bit disappointed because I went from being player of the year to sort of being sub, and I played when people were injured. I would continue to play. So I knew the writing was on the wall when he got appointed.
So you got pushed out on loan a couple of times. I spoke to Gavin Price today, who you played with at Stirling. Did you enjoy playing at Stirling and Wraith Rovers for those short spells?
Yes, well, so there's a bit of a story behind that, and I don't know whether there's a bit that's missed out. Coming back to the real injury that sort of finished me. Basically, what happened? Owen Archdeacon Morton signed Owen Archdeacon from Carlisle, and he came in at left back where I had been sort of playing 60% of the games. So Carlisle inquired about me, and not many people kind of know what actually happened. Even a lot of the Morton guys don't. Carlisle wanted me to sort of go on to come to Morton, me to go down to Carlisle. So I got invited down. I've basically been on the bench against St Mirren on the Wednesday night. They played St Mirren in a derby, and then I had to travel down to Carlisle on the Thursday and went down to the club, met the chairman, a guy called Michael Knighton, who was, I think formerly...
Guy that tried to buy Man United.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think he flew in on a helicopter, didn't he, to Old Trafford. So he was the chairman. So I met Michael, and he said basically to train with the team, and then he says, "Want you playing a game against York City tonight?" So I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure that's kind of been agreed with the club." So I actually phoned Billy Stark and said, "Listen, they want to see me playing a game before they sign me," and Billy agreed to me playing in this game, and this is honestly not, you couldn't make this up. So basically it got agreed by both clubs, and I remember playing in this game against York City, coming back to my enthusiasm, and I'd looked, what was I doing? And I was cruising through the game and actually playing really well, and it was just nearly half time, and I went in for a ridiculous challenge, and both of our legs crashed. I'd done my cruciate, I'd done my ACL. And I didn't know at the time, I just thought I'd injured my knee, and I went back. I went up back to Morton the following day because I had heavy swelling on my knee, and I went back and the physio looked at me and sent me for a scan, and basically I'd done my ACL, I'd done my anterior and posterior, so like really, really nasty one. So I was out for 14 months. And people missed this part out because I'd signed a 2-year contract. I was still signed with Morton, so I was out for 14 months, and I actually done my rehab at Hibs. Because I was living in Edinburgh, and to save me, I had a club car, Morton club car, etc. But to save me travelling through to Morton, which was a 2-hour journey, I got permission to do my rehab at Hibs. So Hibs, Alec McLeish was the manager, him and Andy Watson. Parky was there. It was through Donald Park. That's how that was a connection. So I ended up was in at Hibs for probably about 9 months. They actually gave me a squad number. They gave me training gear, treated me as a player, and I'd done all my rehab at Hibs. The physio was just, I don't think I would have got back without him. He gave me a sort of weights program, but I just didn't get back playing for 14 months. So when I did play, I played in Hibs reserves. So I played a couple of games for Hibs reserves. My contract at Morton was coming to an end, and then I went, played a few games for Stirling and Wraith Rovers, but I hadn't played for a year, and it was probably the games I played for Stirling, I'd done okay, but I just sat defensively, didn't try to do anything. But that was really my first sort of dozen games back after being out for 14 months. I've still got a 20-inch scar on my left knee to show for my injury. After that, that's when things. Yeah, you probably look at my Wikipedia and wonder what happened, and that was the reason. So I had my bad leg break, and then I had my bad cruciate. And my cruciate was, I got told I wouldn't play again by the surgeon. And so once again, I had to go through the kind of rehab, and it was, that was my livelihood. I was 25, I was getting married at the time, and you've got somebody saying that you're not going to play again. So I've kind of, my career was full of disappointments and turmoil. That's why I do look at the parts that were good so fondly, because sometimes it's a what if situation.
Well, is this the time where you start thinking about your life after football?
Yeah, absolutely. I went through, so during that time I was out, I was always mindful, probably through my mum and dad, just when we were younger, also about education. So I done really well at school, done hires, and then when I was playing for Morton, there's a wee story behind this. So James Watt College were the main sponsors of our shirt, and I remember when I was probably 22, 23, they invited some players to the campus for photos. It was like a commercial photo shoot. And I asked, it was the director of the campus, I actually asked him about enrolling in a course. And he kind of looked at me as if, "Oh, you're a footballer, lad." And I was like, would there be any courses that I could come on now that you're the main sponsor? So they organised business studies course for myself, and there was another guy called Warren Hawke, who's one of my best friends in football. So both of us done a business management course while we were kind of full time at Morton, and this was James Watt College made the course around our full time training. So I kind of had done an HNC in business management, HND in business management. So that was the first taste of, used to do it at nights as well, and there was courses during the day that we went on after training. So myself and Warren were the only two players, and we all had the opportunity to do it, and because it was a time with the club. So that was the first kind of taste of business, and I enjoyed that side of things. So when the injuries started to happen, that the natural focus switched to, right, am I going to be able to sustain a career here in football? I was probably honest with myself when I was 26, and I made that transition, which was difficult, into back to part-time football.
So you moved on to Clydebank when you left Morton. Was that part-time then?
Yeah, so Ian McCall, it was, and again, it was all from me. It was just about getting back playing football. And again, they were in the championship. We were bottom of the league, and it was more for me just to play somewhere and get some regular games, get my fitness back, get my confidence back. And I did enjoyed my time there. Played half a season and done really well in a pretty poor squad. And I got a chance to go back full time with Ross County, and Neil Cooper was the manager. And so they were after a left-sided player. So, I got that little opportunity of full time again, and I still wasn't quite ready to give up. So I went up there, and Mark Duffy was, me and him we were roommates. We lived in a house in Meadowbank, which was in the middle of nowhere. And 5 of us in this house, and me and Mark Duffy, we used to travel up, and it was Neil Cooper was the manager. So when we got promoted from Division 2 to Division 1, so me and Ferret were isolated in the middle of nowhere.
Mark promised me some stories, but he hasn't come good on that. So this is your opportunity to get at him.
No, me and Ferret, we used to take turns driving up, and it was a long, long way. But I'll tell you a quick story about Neil Cooper, and I don't know whether Duff will remember it. We basically, I think we were top of the league, and I think because Neil Cooper could have a strange side to him in terms, he was very funny, but there was an odd side. We were playing, I think it was maybe Alloa, and we were beating them 3-0 at half time. We're absolutely cruising, and the final score was 3-0. And we just collapsed and basically conceded, then 3-0, and he was going off his head, absolutely off his head. So we used to get the weekend off, and then we used to travel back up on the Monday night, because he used to give us Monday off as well. And basically, I had a function with my wife now. She was my fiance at the time. It was hard work, and Mark had a night out in Edinburgh as well. So we're all getting ready, and he goes, "I want you in tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. We are like, me and Duff are looking at each other, going, dear. So we got in the car and we drove all the way back down to Edinburgh. And Mark went to his do, I went to my do, and we met at 6 o'clock in the morning to drive back up. We got back up for 9:30. The training gear was all out. So we got the training gear on, and he goes, Neil Cooper come out of the dressing room, right, get the one done round the pitch. He made us run round the pitch once, and then that was it. Told us to go. So he brought us all, so me and Ferret were bloody hell. So he brought us all the way up the road just to go one lap round the pitch. So Ferret was a good player, very, very dynamic. Could play. They played him actual left wing back at Ross County, and he done really well. He was always very explosive, and probably he would admit that at times he could have been a bit more composed on the ball, but he was strong, and but he's really good pal of mine. Get on well with him.
So you spent 6 months at Ross County. Did they want to keep you on? What was the situation there?
Yeah, they didn't know. So basically, at the end of my contract, there was 6 or 7 of us, experienced lads, that they had made a conscious decision to work with a youth program, and there was 6 or 7 of us that we all got released, and they wanted to move in a different direction, the club. Despite them getting promoted, and we got them promoted, and so yeah, that to be honest, it wasn't even disappointment then. I'd been through sort of all the rigors of coming back from my injury. Kind of at that point was probably ready for part-time football, and my legs were ready for that. I still wanted to play. I still wanted to continue to play because physically was okay, other than my knee. So yeah, I came back down the road and got the chance to join Stenhousemuir. So Brian Fairley was the manager. So Brian was great, and sort of he sold me the club. And there was quite a few options at part-time. I probably could have went to sort of 5 or 6 different teams at part-times. Did it a little bit easier to get into a club, on a part-time basis and full-time. Brian Fairley made me captain in my first season, and yeah, it was Tuesday, Thursdays, back to kind of how it all started at Meadowbank for me. Tuesday, Thursday evenings training, and we were playing in kind of the league. I think it was Division 1 we were playing in, and yeah, played probably 40, 50 games for Stenhousemuir. And again, I'd done okay. It wasn't, we didn't have any terrific seasons. We were probably bottom half of the league on both seasons that I was there. But it was, yeah, and again, it took me, again, I was still kind of probably my first season trying to get back from my injury. And I just felt it wasn't as quick when I was on the turn, when I was kind of turning, people were running at me when I was having to turn over my left shoulder. I was struggling a wee bit, and it was an injury where I probably shouldn't have got back playing, but I did. So it was okay. Yeah, my experience was okay there. Nice run club, and yeah, it was just a nice enough place to be.
At what point is your kind of focus shifting from football to your business interests?
Yeah, so it's completely at this point is I made a conscious decision to go down the business route, and I knew what. Not that I wasn't in love with the game, but I was 20, kind of 6 when I was at Stenhousemuir, 26 to 28, and I had a young family at the time. I always was interested in business, always interested in figures, and yeah, it was very much the shift was from my focus had to be switching from football and treating my football as a hobby to creating a future for my family. That was the most important thing. And, I actually found that part really enjoyable. Really enjoyed the actual pressure of not being a footballer. And, the second part, it's kind of break my life into 2 sections, where it's because I'm 50 now, one where it was football up to 26, and 26 to 50, creating my business structures and, going down that route, which I've actually enjoyed immensely. I don't tell the story. This is why this has been quite nervous at the start about telling you. I've not spoke to anybody about my career, and none of my clients now, other than the sports clients, but none of my private clients know that I played football. I don't ever share that information. I keep it private. It's only when we get opportunities like this that I'm able to re-look at what actually happened, because a lot of it was disappointment. And it's trying to relive the injuries and the rehab, and probably I spent 4 years of my football career on the treatment table, but I showed the coming back to that desire, ambition. I got back from these injuries. I dare say there's quite a lot of players that wouldn't be able to have done that.
If you don't mind me asking, what's your kind of financial position when you're coming out of full-time football?
Yeah,
is it a huge gamble?
Yeah, so the level I was at when I was at Newcastle, we got a nice signing-on fee, and the wages were good. As soon as you come out of that, it's reasonable wages, and I was fortunate enough when I signed for Newcastle, I was able to buy a flat. Sensible. I was always kind of pretty sensible, even at that young age. And again, it was probably mum and dad behind me. So I got a flat in Lees's Terrace, and some of the Meadowbank lads will remember it, because they used to come down and get the train down and come to the games. And it was a 1-bedroom flat in Lees's Terrace, and sometimes we'd have 10 guys all sleeping on the floor in sleeping bags. And come down to the game. So the likes of Ellie, Simon Scott and Maxie and kind of all these boys used to come down quite frequently to visit, go to games. So I was always, so I done okay at Newcastle and was sensible. That next part of my career, you were earning, reasonable money, but certainly not enough to, retire on or, nowhere near. Yeah, and that's part of the education that we do with the footballers now is all about how to manage their money and making sure that, there's stats out there that the average player, the average career is about 7.8 years at the elite level of sport. So if you think, the likes of yourself and me, we've got maybe a 30, 40-year kind of window to earn money in a full-time capacity. These guys have 7, 8 years. So they've got to compress their earnings into that. And so that's very much an educational piece that we do. So yeah, we're coming out, I was starting from scratch. I had my property, but that's why I'm so proud of what I've managed to build up. Because you're starting with, my property for my family, but other than that, there was, not a lot behind us.
So what are you doing when you're starting out in business?
So my wife worked for Aegon. She is in financial services. And Lee was doing, when I was so I was signed for Stenhousemuir, part-time, but I didn't have a main job for the first kind of good 6 months. And Lee was doing exams with her work. She kept failing this exam. And it was all to do regulation and ethics, and she was failing this exam. And I actually remember sitting in the house and I picked the book up, and this is swearing my life this happened. I picked the book up and started to read this big manual. I started to read it, and I obviously got my business studies sort of exams behind me, and I started to read the book, and I found it the most dry subject ever. I found it interesting, and it was all about ethics, regulation, the Financial Conduct Authority, and I kind of started reading the book and found it interesting. And then I kind of probably after maybe a week said to Lee, I'm going to sit that exam. And Lee's, Pete, there's no chance of passing it. So difficult. I've tried it 3 times. So I booked myself on for the exam and I got a merit. So I got 90, I think I got 97% in the exam. And Lee was like, you are joking. That was a bit of a laughing joke that she couldn't pass. I got 3 questions wrong. And I continued on that journey and I enjoyed it. I started to pass sort of these exams, moving into financial planning, then moved into the kind of discretionary investment management and just went on a journey for several years, just building up my knowledge, building up my qualification and accreditations and become a wealth advisor. And then we set up Cormack Wealth Management, which is a private client office in the West End of Edinburgh. So we've got beautiful offices in Drumshoe Garden, and we've got a successful wealth management business, which has been running for years. So yeah, I'm pretty proud of kind of what I, because that transition out of sport's really difficult, and that's where some of the guys tend to struggle, whereas I kind of flourished. And then we set up alongside that as well. I had a vision of a sports management company and giving financial advice to sports clients. Because, I've seen too many people, elite sportsmen, going bankrupt, divorced, separation, etc., and, get addiction, gambling problems. So I kind of thought, my vision was to run a sports management business alongside the wealth management business so they could kind of interlink with each other. So we set up Quantum Sport at the same time about 9-10 years ago, and again it's hugely successful. So we got 13 consultants in that business throughout the UK. We now represent about 160 professional athletes. So it's been hard work, really hard work. But I kind of look back now, and that's why I wouldn't change anything football-wise. Because myself and wife often have this conversation, if I had remained full-time, I would have probably got to 32, 33 and not made enough money to retire on. And it's kind of then what do I do? Where I was forced out the game at 26. That's kind of, I always believe your life's planned out for you, and I've had a more successful professional career. I probably had the professional career that I wanted to have at football, if that makes sense. And again, it's all transferable skills. The football back to my Meadowbank days. It was all about discipline. It was all about being on time, punctuation. It was all about being smart and tidy. I remember my debut and for Meadowbank, 16, and I had my shirt out, my short ready. We were lining up ready. It was my debut, and I was nervous as hell. And I remember actually ready to walk out with my shirt hanging out. And I think it was either Tam Graham or Louis tapped me on the shoulder. Hey, get your shirt tucked in. I had to put my shirt in, tie my shirt on. I remember that just before I came out on the pitch. It was all about tidiness and just all these transferable skills. You've got to be sort of will to win, desire, attitude, discipline, and you transfer them into your business life, and that's what I've maintained. My business has flourished because of what I was taught when I was younger playing football. And it's been, I'm prouder of my businesses than my football career. That's why I don't I kind of cut it off a little bit. And, a lot of people, maybe when they get to know me a bit better, sometimes I can be quite shy. Sometimes I don't tell them I played football, and, don't tell them who my dad was. And even though these are kind of proud things to discuss, I tend to keep that kind of private until people ask questions like yourself did.
And that brings me on to an interesting question, actually. So, I've heard from your mouth today that you're really, really proud of your dad.
Yeah.
Does it frustrate you that if people try and find out about your football career, it's really hard to find anything because you've got the same name?
No, and again, I would rather it all be about my dad, to be honest. We've got articles in scrapbooks saying he was one of the best players in Europe in sort of 1975. He won, the FA Cup, Division 1 title. He won 2 UEFA Cups, 5 Charity Shields, Scotland caps, and you name it. So I'm prouder of what he achieved than what I did. I've always wanted to follow in his footsteps, and I've done it to some degree, but it was, the challenge was, can you be? Not many sons are better than their dads. There's very few. Maybe Frank Lampard, Jamie Redknapp, but there's not many. And I've met Paul Dalglish a couple of times. I know Paul quite well, and we've had the discussion about he was in a similar situation. Following Kenny Dalglish, it was very difficult for him. He was very similar sort of to me, and that it was just you're in the shadows all the time, and are you ever going to be as good as these guys? Probably really difficult. So it's very, very hard to do, but enjoyable along the way.
Even if you type in Peter Cormack Newcastle, it comes up with list of games Peter Cormack played against Newcastle for Liverpool.
I don't mind that. I've got my memories, and I've got lots of stories that I can tell. I've got my scrapbooks and tops, and my boys are now kind of 24 and 16. My daughter's 21, and they look at all the, we've got a library of pictures of me sort of playing, playing for Morton and all the different clubs along with my dad. So, as long as the people close to me know what it meant to me, then that's good enough for me. That's why I was keen to do this, to share my story with people.
So let's pivot back to football and talk about your kind of part-time career. So you enjoyed your time with Stenhousemuir?
Yeah, Stenhousemuir was good. We finished, mid-table on both occasions. As I said, Brian Fairley made me captain, gave me the quite liked it, responsibility. I'd always been captain. I'd been captain at Hutchie. Then Parky must have seen something in me at 16 and 17. Was captain of the Newcastle youth team. So I always was tried to be a leader. And at Stenhousemuir, I liked the responsibility of being involved in conversations with the coaching team, just that leadership role. It suited me. I was always a talker on the pitch and kind of encouraged the young lads, etc. So I enjoyed my time at Stenhousemuir. But I actually went. My next 2 years were at Albion Rovers, and he kindled my love for football there. Believe it or not. And I'll tell you a quick story with Albion Rovers, quite funny. Basically, it was Peter Hetherston got in touch and said, "We want to sign you. Will you come through to the ground?" And it was like a June summer's night, and he said, "I'll meet you at the ground at 7 o'clock on Wednesday." So I said to my dad at the time, "You want to come through with me?" And he was, "Yeah, I'll come through." So we went through to Clifton Hill, and I don't know whether you've been to the ground. It's this old wreck of a ground, and honestly, we've turned up in this. My dad's car. My dad's looking. Bearing in mind, being at Anfield and Newcastle and kind of St James's Park, we're looking. What the hell's this come down to now? So we walked into the stadium, and Peter Hetherston wasn't there, but we seen basically the groundsman, and he was cutting the grass with an old fly mower. You know, they're just tiny, tiny little fly mower, and he's cutting the pitch with the fly mower. Me and my dad looked at each other saying, you're going right down to the bottom here. And I actually loved my football there. It was literally, they had nothing. They didn't have any ties for your socks. Half the time we didn't have kit, proper kit. But I just kind of played every week for 2 seasons. Played on a good side. It was okay. I played left side of a back three, very comfortable. Used all my kind of experience and just composure, and never went in for any daft tackle. And I actually kind of really enjoyed my 2 years. It was good. It's a good team spirit. We won 80% of the games we played. Peter Hetherston was brilliant. Trusted me as an older, experienced pro by then, just go and play him. And actually, yeah, it was really, really enjoyable. But there was basically nothing. There was holes in the changing room floor, and you had a shower, and it was bloody old dirty water coming out of the showers, and it was just, the place was a tip. But it just shows you, So it was quite a good 2 seasons that I had there.
While you were there, Kevin McAllister changed from became player manager. How does the dynamic change when someone becomes player manager?
Yeah, so this was the second season. Crunchy, outstanding player. Even latterly, he was probably his late teens, and what a balance. Just a tricky winger, would chop it left to right, a bit like Kevin Kane actually. He kind of would go chop, 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 but not actually. You had no idea when he was going to cross the ball. But just amazing skill, amazing feet. He was probably approaching 40. So what a player. And then I think, Elliston, second season, I think he resigned, and Crunch was playing well and just got the opportunity as a coach. So he went in as manager, Scott Crabbe as assistant, and I'm still good pals with Crabbo now. So yeah, they got the opportunity of the first coaching role. And yeah, he was, I would say, not the best at speaking, in terms of team talks, etc. I wouldn't say that was his strength, but I've respected anybody that was my manager. They're all kind of got their own traits, and kind of some better than others. But yeah, Crunchy was okay.
Does he stop being Crunchy and become boss or gaffer?
Yeah, I think we had to switch. It's different again. When I was younger with Terry, he was always boss, and kind of the older lads would call Terry, but I think it's similar. So, I was probably 28, 29 at the time, so probably got away with calling him Crunchy still. Whereas the younger lads, a bit more kind of respect, and call him, it was always gaffer or boss. He was always okay with me. Yeah, I always got on well with him.
So you really enjoyed your 2 years at Albion Rovers, and then is you drawing a line under your career then and trying to move on?
I actually shouldn't have signed for Bonet. I was doing somebody a favour. Jimmy Sanderson played with me at Stenhousemuir, and I got on really well with Jimmy. Travelled through with him for about a year, and he got his first managerial gig at Bowness, and he would phone constantly at me. Come on, we could do it. Your experience. I really kind of wasn't up for, no disrespect to Bowness whatsoever. That was kind of going down to junior level, and I always I felt a bit sense of pride that I would not play junior football, and try and go for my whole career with, playing professional. And I actually done Jimmy a favour. I went through, and he sort of said, come be my main man at the back, and, use your experience. And I actually signed to as a favour for him, and it was okay. It was a wee bit similar to Albion Rovers in terms of standard of club. Football wasn't the greatest, and I remember a few games, towards the end of that season, just thinking, referee blow the final whistle. Now that kind of was probably the wrong move for me, because I enjoyed Albion Rovers, where I actually got excited about football again. That kind of sent me backwards, to be honest. And it was after that I thought, enough's enough. And I was still really young. I was only probably 31. And I made the decision, that was concentrate fully on my businesses. But our both got one last.
John McGlashan phoned you up.
Yeah, so I'll tell you just quickly before we finish up. So, and again, I went back to Arbroath and done pre-season. He'd played first 8 games really well. Actually, was having a good start to the season, decent side. Do you know, this was how my career ended. It was all a bit strange. So we basically had a free weekend, and it was an international weekend, and all the leagues were closed. So we trained on the Thursday, and my wife's cousin's 40th, or it was her 30th actually. It was her birthday party on the Friday night, and we had 2 young kids at the time. So Luke and Lois were kind of toddlers. So actually, Lee said, "Oh, that'll be brilliant if you can come and help me with the kids. You're off Friday." So we got trained on the Thursday. And Thursday night, as we were about to leave, the manager came in and said we've arranged the game against Celtic on Friday night. And all the boys were like, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, Stilian Petrov had broke his leg. He was doing his rehab, so they wanted to organise a fixture. So Celtic were bringing quite a strong team up on the Friday. So I got back to the house and said to Lee, I can't make Lisa's birthday," and Lee was not happy at all. She said, "I've got a game against Celtic." So I drove up to, I remember, the businesses were up and running, and we're driving up to Arbroath, and I was sub. I was basically, so I played 8 games in a row, and I get it now. It was a friendly, so you want to try something else, but I was sub, and the manager told me to get warmed up 10 minutes before the end of the game. So I'm kind of running along the touchline, and I'm thinking, so what am I doing? Like 31 or 32 time, what am I doing? And he put me on the last 10 minutes, and I kind of played, done my best as a wheel over those 10 minutes, and I got in the car, I was driving back, and I was basically approaching Dundee. Don't know whether you've been up to Arbroath, so you go Arbroath, Dundee. And it's pitch black, and I'm driving on my own, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just having a wee think. That's me finished. And I remember phoning my dad on the way down. It was must have been back at 10, pitch black, that road. And my dad answered the phone and he said, "What was it?" I said, "That's me finished." And he went, "What do you mean?" So I'm not going back. And he said, "You've just signed, a contract with the club. They've used the budget up." He says, "You'll regret it." He says, "Once you're finished, that's you." And I was like, "No, Dad, I'm comfortable. That's me. I'm not going to play again." And that was it's kind of how it ended for me. I made the decision, stood by it, phoned the manager, and he said, "Well, I'll give you 6 weeks to think about it and just take some time off with your family." And, he says, "You'll be back, keep your contract open for you." I never went back. And that's how it all ended. So went from that kind of dream of professional football as a wee boy and going through that, just loved the game, to the back end. It was, I just was finding it all a bit tough with the injuries, and then just the kind of aspect of the commitment that part-time football's needed. You need big commitment. So that was me, and I've no regret, none whatsoever. And I'd do it all again if I got the chance.
Brilliant. So you're involved in representing players now. How much do you think those kind of the early experiences where you weren't playing first team football influence you work in that sphere now?
Yeah, it's massively important, and I kind of, a couple of times I've repeated myself, and that your life's planned for you, and all these experiences I've built up, I've got that knowledge to share with the younger lads now. And it was kind of during your career, there's a tendency to make hasty decisions, and you're not playing maybe 6 games, right? "Oh, I'm leaving. I'm away somewhere else." Where, if you had a waited 8 games, you would have probably got back in because somebody got injured or suspended, and that's what generally tends to happen. So experience brings you the knowledge. We now got a mixture of players from Premier League, really established, to sort of 16, 17-year-old first-year professionals, or still in the scholarship programs as they are down south. So yes, constant educational process for them. And do you know what? I've done most things have happened to me in terms of, a big signing big club, playing in front of a big crowd, getting injured, real nasty ones where career-ending injuries, going full-time, part-time, having fans boo me to fans cheer me, and experienced it all. And you speak to these guys with experience, and you become a bit of a father figure to them. I've had all sorts, representing the lads from guys getting called up to international level to guys being in a car crash to people being arrested to people ending because of injury, and you've just got to be. That's why you represent them. You've got to be there for them and become a bit of a father figure, actually. And that's why I think we're successful in that space as well. We generally care for the lads and the girls that we look after, but the primary focus is getting them to concentrate on their career, give it the best, give it their all. If you give it your all, don't ever be in a position where you're looking back thinking, oh, I wish I'd have tried a bit harder. I look at myself, my career, could not have tried any harder. That's why I got injured. All these injuries were because I was trying too hard, going in for reckless challenges where I was trying to prove a point that I was maybe better, trying to be at my dad's level. And that's what held me up a little bit. Just we try and teach the lads that we represent. Don't get to your 30s and think, what the hell, I wish I'd have tried a bit harder at that club. Never be in that position.
One thing that stood out from what you said is that when you left Newcastle and came back to Scotland, the clash of styles where you've been playing all this passing football and then you've gone back to the rough and tumble. I imagine that's something a lot of young players experience now when they come out of academy football.
Yeah, I think they do. I think, I watch a lot of football because I have to, and a lot of, I think there's lots of broken parts in football in general, particularly youth football. I think there's too much an onus on possession-based style, playing out from the back, 2-touch, 3-touch, sideways passes, not really going anywhere. I think the Maverick that we've spoken about, the Marco Radjamakis and Kevin Kanes and kind of guys like that have disappeared from the game. Or you very rarely will you see a winger either side taking one-on-one, being comfortable going either side and getting crosses in. And I think the games went too passive in terms of, these kids watch training sessions and it's literally every box that you look at is possession-based football, whereas when we played, you are, my dad would have sort of me confronting just a fullback going one-on-one, repetitive all the time. So I think what happens then is they struggle when they come into Scotland. Scotland, particularly the lower leagues, is kind of very much back to front. And the midfield get missed, so they find it hard. How do you get possession? How do you retain? It's difficult. And that's what happened to me. You've got to learn, and half the time the football goes out the window and you're kind of heading it on or knocking it on first time. So you've got to learn quickly.
And in your life now, I'm hearing that you've got two hats. So you've got your wealth management hat where you don't talk about football, and then your sports management where all you talk about is football. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think the wealth management business is private clients. So it's high net worth clients that are maybe business owners and could be just people that are wealthy that are retired, maybe at retirement age. It could be young professional, and I tend to approach that business differently because I want credibility in my space. A qualified investment manager, financial planner, business owner, managing director of my company. So I don't bring the football into play unless somebody really knows me and asks a question. I happily share a few stories about that. It's very much professional business. They know me as Pete Cormack, managing director of Cormack Wealth. Whereas with football, you get pushed into that. You're dealing with what I know, footballers and professional cricketers, professional rugby guys, and we're all elite sportsmen. So you will get naturally drawn into sharing your experiences with them, and that helps because they think, right, well, Pete did play at a decent level, so he knows what I'm experiencing, and it's a little bit easier to have that conversation. But there's a fine line, and both businesses are distinct from each other. The business goes from when the senior players get good contracts, etc. We will give them financial advice. This is what you should do with your money. But there's very much kind of a separation of my role. I've been pretty clear on that from sort of setting them up at this front end.
Brilliant. Do your kids play football?
Yeah, so we've got my Luke. Luke was in at Hib. So Luke's 24.
Hang on. You've got a son and you didn't call him Peter.
Yeah, that's for Peter the Fourth. Yeah.
God.
So Luke was in at Hibs when he was 18, 17, 18, and it was a complete opposite to me. He was a flying winger, and he's living in Sydney at the moment, so he's doing well for himself. So he's stopped playing now, but he's still, just fitness freak. Plays his five-a-sides, but he's doing great in Sydney. And then my youngest boy plays for Edinburgh City Pro Youth under 18s, a goalkeeper. So no comparison whatsoever. So yeah, he's a goalkeeper and he's flourishing. He's doing really well. He's playing regular in there. He's 16, playing regular in the under 18s in the CAS program, and we're chuffed with his progress at the minute. He's a competent goalkeeper. He'll do okay. So he's following in Ellie's footsteps. Yeah, so he's doing well, and so it's nice that they both enjoy their sport. That's the main thing. No pressure from me whatsoever. If they go down that path, certainly the youngest one now, it's great. If not, there's no issues whatsoever.
There we have it, Peter Cormack. I've lost loads of weight since we recorded that. It's quite shocking to watch back. But yeah, I really enjoyed speaking to Peter, and thank him again for his patience waiting for me to get this published. I hope it was worth the wait and you enjoyed listening. Feedback, as ever, positive or constructive, is always very welcome. Since around the time this was recorded, I've had quite a lot going on, and this project had to take a back seat. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but work's been incredibly busy. Then I've had some significant changes in my personal life too. Frankly, yeah, this just hasn't been a priority. So we've got these two summer specials today. I know it's not summer anymore, but yeah, today, and then we've got John McCormack coming up next, probably in a fortnight's time, and I will look to pick this up again later in the year when things have calmed down off the pitch, as it were. This definitely isn't the end. So thank you again for listening, texting, tweeting, watching. If you weren't out there and interested in what I'm doing, then this wouldn't be continuing. So remember, you can follow us on X and Instagram at meadowbankthis. You can email me, it's meadowbankthis@gmail.com. My name is Morgan Knock. God bless, and for now, it's goodbye.